So on a mission to present the quality and flavour of artisanal Italian ice cream to Oxfordshire and beyond, today, Lewis Ratto, owner of Alfonso, is going to share with us his journey. Hi, Lewis, how are you today?
Yeah, very good, very good. Thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're all good, thank you. We're all good. Listen, firstly, thank you very much for taking the time to join us and share your story. It would be great if you could start us off with, what it is that you do and what services you offer. I mean, I looked at your Instagram page and they look very tasty ice creams, I must say, but in your own words, if you just let us know what you're all about.
Yeah, sure. My name's Lewis. The name of my business is Alfonso Gelateria. We're an artisan gelato business based in Oxfordshire. We started about 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago now. And yeah, so the idea of the business was just to kind of bring artisan gelato to the UK. And the original concept was to kind of do it through a food truck because I thought, you know, rich people are kind of used to getting ice cream from a van. It'd be kind of an interesting kind of twist to do artisan gelato from a van. And so started that just in North Oxford in 2018. And off the back of doing that for 2 or 3 years and kind of getting through COVID, opened my first shop in right at the end of 2020. So started 2021. And yeah, since then, kind of just built on that, sort of opening more locations and trying to get the our gelato sort of across sort of this area for now. So we're kind of mostly
Okay.
West Oxford and sort of Cotswolds. So we sell it through our shops, and then we also do a certain amount of sort of wholesale to sort of select sort of customer sort of restaurants and pubs and places like that, garden
Okay.
centres, and yeah, and a few events as well. But yeah,
So,
primarily.
so it kind of started from a van then, and then you moved into shops and wholesale and things like that. How many sites have you got now? How many shops have you got now?
So we just opened our fifth shop
Wow.
about a month ago, so just a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and then hopefully should be getting the keys for a new shop 1st of April, and hopefully opening mid-May in Cheltenham.
Nice.
So still kind of last few bits and pieces to do with the paperwork for that, but hopefully should be six for this summer, and then I think we're taking a breather, kind of consolidate a little bit.
Consolidate, yeah.
Yeah.
So is this your first business? Is this your first business?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I mean, you go six years. You've been through COVID. You've gone from sort of a mobile van through to six shops coming soon and things. What if you had the opportunity to go back and start again? What would you do differently if you had that opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of it's always a difficult one because, benefit of hindsight is kind of, yeah, how do you really measure that? And also like you feel lots of times it's sort of, it's being lucky and the luck that you kind of had, but also the bad luck you didn't have. I mean, for example, I think the shops I found, like running a shop actually ended up being slightly easier than running a food truck. So maybe I would say, oh, well, I would have started a shop. But then, maybe we would have felt a much bigger impact during COVID, if you'd
Yeah.
opened immediately and then 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, there'd been a problem. I mean, I think there's sort of more practical things like understanding VAT thresholds, stuff like that. I registered for VAT primarily because I needed to try and get some money back off the investment because it's a very capital intensive business.
Yeah.
But I think, it probably in hindsight, I would have tried to find a way to either lease the equipment or do something differently just to kind of stay under the VAT threshold for the first
So
years
that
when it was
some
just a
sort of
free.
financial.
Yeah, just kind of like a little bit of understanding of that, understanding more about sort of like bookkeeping and all of the other stuff and
Okay.
the other things that you kind of you kind of need to be a little bit ignorant about to kind of just say, oh no, I just want to start a business. If you start going into all the other stuff that is maybe involved, you might get put off. But at the same time, it probably knowing a little bit more wouldn't be bad.
I think sometimes that that be a fear of being put off is there's an element of self-sabotage there, isn't there? There's lots of people out there that potentially have got a great idea, great business opportunity that's
Mm,
talked themselves out of it.
yeah,
So
and I
it's
think sort of feeling as well that like everything needs to be sort of perfect and right, and you need to have everything figured out. I think that's not a very helpful mentality if you're trying to start a business, because the stuff that you don't know at any point is always going to be way more than the stuff that you do know, or you think you know. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think it's always
There's,
hard to sort of say what would you do
there's
different.
there's a degree of just sort of do it, isn't there? It's like,
Yeah,
Branson's
exactly, and you'll
quite
figure it out
famous,
later.
and
Exactly.
Richard Branson's quite famous for sort of saying that, isn't it? Like, yeah, get started, figure out afterwards. It's kind of make the
Mm.
step. So in terms of, I mean, you've been through, like say, some really interesting times with a relatively new startup at the same time. What have been your biggest learnings as a business owner since you began?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just sort of it seems to be there's so many practical things that you just need to know how to do, and you kind of like brush up against, and you kind of you reach a sort of a limit and you kind of have to figure it out. I mean, even things, all the practical stuff like leases, so figuring out how you put an offer on a shop, getting contractors, designs, all the stuff that goes into food safety. There's all the stuff on the production side. I mean, so it just seems endless in terms of like the practical things, because even if you're staying the same, you're trying to improve systems, so you're like, oh, you can do that better, or you can get a different supplier, so you're kind of figuring out that. So that's one part of it, but then the other big learnings are all kind of, I would say, more psychological, both for yourself and sort of handling yourself as a kind of
Yeah,
the role, but then also you're managing people. I think when I started out, it was basically just me, and so you know I just had to work very hard and as hard as I could, and that was kind of it really. There wasn't much
yeah.
to it. Suddenly you've got people, they've got lives, they've got personal things kind of crop up. So you've got to kind of constantly deal with that. It shifts sort of to becoming a very people oriented business. So all the learning seems to be just about people at the moment.
Yeah, it's a fundamental shift in mindset, isn't it, when you start
Yeah,
employing teams? Because the teams will be able to take the business further than you could ever take it on your own. So it's crucial to growth, but it
absolutely,
does change you as a business owner and your focuses and things. So
absolutely, and yeah.
sorry, go on.
No, just saying. I know the other one that kind of just got to my mind is also like bouncing back from setbacks and kind of handling
Yeah,
that sort of part of the business. I think if you're lucky, you kind of get a few things right at the start, and you're kind of like, okay, you feel like you're kind of on your way. You don't always get it right. You eventually think something's going to go one way and it doesn't, or something doesn't work out, or you put a lot of expectations, or you're disappointing people, you're letting people down. So also building that resilience is kind of another big part of, I'd say, learning that
yeah.
you don't really get from a business book necessarily.
Yeah, self-development's crucial. So, in my
Mm,
experience working with, business owners, whether they're as established as someone like Jeff Bezos or just starting out as a solopreneur, everybody encounters certain challenges, whether it's a touch of imposter syndrome,
mm.
self-sabotage, knowledge gaps, and things like that. When you go back to when you were sort of looking at learning all of those different things, whether it's the financials, whether it's the leases and stuff like
Mm.
that, did you learn that yourself, or did you go and find people that sort of knew what they were doing in that area to give you support?
Yeah, so I think that's something that I would maybe use as like encouragement to people. I would say that there's a huge amount that you can learn from your customers and your suppliers and the people that are kind of involved. So when we were doing the lease on the first shop, you don't not being afraid to look stupid and asking your solicitor, saying like, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that
Yeah.
mean? And so just getting them to kind of really explain, and kind of you're kind of you're paying for them and they're getting a pretty raw deal because they're dealing with someone who's very inept and doesn't know really what they're talking about on their first round. But by the third or fourth or fifth time, you're kind of like, okay, you're kind of talking a little bit, and they're getting the benefit of having explained it from the start. So I think relying on the people that you work with, I'd say in the industry, suppliers, they'll have a much better idea of the market than you do. So just asking them like, what do you think? And learning from those sort of people as well is very valuable.
Yeah, yeah, that's great advice. Even just asking questions is
Mm,
valuable, isn't it? And it's funny the sort of the local sort of small business community is very helpful. People
mm.
think that it's
Oh,
they're not going to tell me anything because they're my competitors or they're in business and they want to keep. Actually, everybody tends to want to help each other.
yeah, totally. And I think it's sort of, if you're going to be the person as a business owner that doesn't sort of give help and sort of, offer kind of genuine advice, you'll quickly become isolated,
Yeah,
versus if you have a more collaborative approach. you know my my coffee suppliers, they benefit from my business doing well because we'll order more coffee from them,
absolutely.
and then likewise my neighbor benefits from me doing well because, and I say exactly an ice cream shop, the better we do, the more people will come there and will also go there. So I think, and I've noticed that, when you're in an environment where the businesses sort of that surround you, either geographically or just like industry or whatever, um, if everybody's sort of more collaborative, everyone benefits. So it's sort of like a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of relationship.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So let's talk about team then. So you've gone
Mhm.
from, like you say, starting off on your own and then growing a team on it. I imagine it's a fairly decent sized team now.
Yeah,
What do you look for in terms of qualities for the people that you want in part of your team, and how do you sort of foster a really sort of productive working environment?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, sort of something that maybe I was very slow to hire, probably too slow to hire.
Yeah.
Not realizing that freeing up my time had a sort of big benefit, in of itself. So yeah, maybe not reaching that sort of breaking point before hiring. But then when I did actually get people, yeah, hiring really based on sort of the question that, we have sort of like a little mini criteria. Can they do the job? Can they follow instructions? Will they fit? Can they work with others? Will they fit and will they stay? Those are my kind of five ones that I kind of use. But I think primarily like hiring, because we hire lots of people in the shops that are kind of temporary, part-time, weekend. The business swells up in the summer and then kind of shrinks in the winter.
Yeah.
We're hiring people that maybe it's their sort of first or second, or it's early. So it's just about attitude really, and whether they are interested in the business, interested in the product. And I think kind of distilled down to, do they get it?
Okay.
Do they understand what we're actually trying to do, why the customer is coming in to buy from us? And that's a kind of a hard one. So, it's just basically enthusiasm and willingness to learn, because then I can kind of drone on about artisan and quality and colored pistachios and all the rest of it. Yeah, I think, and also from my perspective, my job is to enable them to do their best. So really, it's just sort of like, okay, can I have the systems in place so that they have to do the minimum amount of rubbish jobs so that they can concentrate on what it's fundamentally about. And then obviously on the other side, it's sort of on the production side, and there's sort of, it's slightly different. Um, but again, it's sort of like just kind of enabling them to kind of have the resources that they need and that they're supported, um, so they can do their job, and
Yeah.
also show that the business is actually going somewhere, and stay here because it's we're
There's a bit of
doubling in
vision there. There's
size.
a bit of excitement. So you're part of
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
Yeah, it's at the moment recruitment's a bit more like marketing, and there's a little
Mm,
bit more people want a sense of purpose, sense of belonging. So having that
absolutely.
having
Mm,
that vision, that culture, that sort of actually a
yeah,
little bit more than
100%.
just working in a shop and doing a nine to
Mhm.
five. I can ask you about systems in a second, so I'll come back to that in a second. But what I'm picking up from the recruitment process is you're looking for attitude and hiring on attitude, and then sort of training for skill and
Mm,
things like that. And the basic essence of any business is made up of kind of three things. You've got a product or service that you offer that people want to buy. You then have people that sort of come into the business and deliver that product or service, and then you have systems that they run the systems to deliver them product or service. I'm guessing you've got quite a well structured, systemized way of doing what you're doing with the expansion the way it's going.
yeah, I mean, I'm pretty obsessive about like trying new software and being
Okay.
prepared to introduce a new software and write all the documentation and guides for staff, and then 2 months later they hate it and it doesn't work at all, and they much prefer the old system. And you go, okay, well, all right, let's maybe it doesn't really work, so let's try and let's just go back to the other one and we'll figure out something else. So, um, yeah, I think some of my staff find it quite funny that we have like sort of 5 or 6 different apps for basically
What's
doing.
driving that? Is that kind of a pursuit for perfection? What's driving?
Yeah, I think it's sort of, I mean, maybe a pursuit of perfection, or maybe it's just a pursuit of laziness, because I have an app like allergens and all the guides and everything and policies. When people ask me a question, if I have to, if the question gets asked more than once, I'll tend to sort of write it down somewhere and have it accessible so that each person doesn't have to ask me again.
Yeah.
And so that if they're ordering, or if the communication, if I feel like there's middlemen between, the driver and why is something being asked to two people before it gets to the person who actually is responsible for it, sort of creating a more direct I guess relationship between them. So just sort of like for the shops sort of can order automatically at the end of the day, and just sort of stuff like that. I think it's just sort of basically just to simplify the jobs as
Yeah.
much as possible. More than, I mean, perfection, sure, but it's actually more of a simplification. I think as the business gets bigger, you kind of fall back more on these sort of processes, and they need to be simple in order to be able to kind of manage a more complex and bigger business.
I love the phrase "pursuit of laziness" because that's kind of that's absolutely brilliant. So you're dead right. It's kind of building the systems that the team can run and making running the systems as easy as possible for them to then actually have a bit of fun with the people that build the
Exactly.
culture and make it easy for your customers to come and enjoy the experience and stuff. So
Mhm.
many organizations out there that the system complicates things.
Mm.
Trying to keep it simple is a really key message.
Yeah,
Really,
or there's no system, or there's
yeah.
one person who endlessly is being asked the same things, and they're hating it because they're constantly having to do the same things. And yeah,
You're obviously, quite an active person in terms of your mind's thinking about things, you're ambitious and stuff like that. How do you balance, your personal time with the demands
mm.
of running and growing a business?
Yeah, I think for the first sort of 2 years, 3 years, there was no social life really, and because it's when it's just you, there really you can't kind of, unless you have a day off where you're closed, you can't really do that. So it's sort of, you do have to make those sort of time sacrifices. Um, I think now that it's kind of got to the point where we've got a bit more of a team and there's more staff, it's still hard to kind of get away from it. But what you can do is, at least I feel like my approach now is, you sort of just have to put it in the calendar and just kind of say, okay, I'm away that week, or I'm away these 3 days. And then you have to, it kind of forces you, and it's a bit of a stress test as well to the business, for the business, to
Yeah.
kind of like say, well, can the business cope without me being there for like 5 days? And and then if it's like, why not? Then okay, well, then implementing things to make sure that you can do that. So I'm hoping this year, for the first time in 6 years, I can have a hot, like a week off in the summer. Would be, it's pretty unusual, but yeah,
A
because
well
normally
earned
it's October.
a well earned week away in the peak season.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just because you get sort of, at least for me, I always sort of get mega burnt out by the time we sort of hit
Yeah.
August, and it's sort of just sort of zombie until the end of September. And I figured, actually we're year round, and there's other things that we need to. There's new challenges for the winter now, so actually, there probably would, and that's the other thing. You realize that actually the business benefits from you being away for a week and being
Yeah.
refreshed, motivated. So yeah,
It's a strong message for a lot of business owners out there. Sometimes you get in the way of your own progress. Actually, the team can take you
definitely.
further. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things I picked up on there. One is putting it in the calendar. It's kind of allocating that time and treating it as seriously as you would if you had a supplier meeting or a client
Mhm.
or whatever. And quite often as business owners, we don't do that. We sacrifice our own personal time and things because we want the business to grow. But it's just as important to take that
Mhm.
time to recharge, refresh, get away for a couple of days and things. And then the other one is time sacrifices. It's kind of, sometimes we need to put things off. It's not saying, no, I can't do that, but actually, this is really important and growing my business at the moment is the priority.
Yeah,
That will give me the vehicle to be able to then go and enjoy the things that I want to do when the business is that stage. Having that clear plan,
of course.
it's really, really powerful, really interesting. So in terms of continued growth, you've got a
Mhm.
couple more sites coming up, and you said you're going to have a bit of a consolidation period. What's the next 5 years look like for you? Looking to grow still?
Yeah, I mean, I think now that we kind of we it works very well in the summer. We're Artisan Gelato, that's sort of building the reputation and kind of helping, trying to see if we can kind of build up the newer locations to become more like the more established ones. Winter's always a challenge, kind of coming up with new products and new ranges. and just kind of like seeing if we can squeeze a bit more out from what we actually have. We're also moving our production unit to a bigger space, so we should actually have a bit more space to kind of do these sort of things. But yeah, longer term, I think it would be nice to have more locations really, and to just kind of like keep on seeing where the business goes. I mean, I think just my mentality is, it's fine to have big goals and look very far ahead, but the first 1, 2, 3 steps kind of look the same regardless. So yeah, revisit that in 6 months and then see.
Very exciting. Well, I've got no doubt you'll be able to get to your goals and your ambitions that where you want to go.
Fingers crossed.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to sort of share with the listeners? Anything you want to add?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I think, if you're thinking of starting to do it, just sort of breaking it down, really chopping down things to the smallest unit that's sort of achievable. I always found that advice for sort of starting, sometimes people say, well, I don't really have the money to start or whatever. So I'd say that I'd push back and put the question, okay, well, if you did have the money, what would be the first step? And then the question, oh, well, I'd have to do this and this and this, and say like, okay, well, can you do that without the money? And say, well, yeah, probably yes. So I would say like, taking steps towards it rather than focusing on the reason why you can't do it would be sort of like advice for people that want to get started. I think that would have helped me early on.
Yeah. Great advice. Yeah, great advice. So, okay, that challenge is in the way. What would you do if that challenge wasn't there? And like you say,
Yeah,
work on it. Yeah, brilliant advice. Listen, thank you, Lewis. It's been really,
no
really
problem.
interesting. Just so our listeners know, where can they go to sort of find out more about what you do and get in contact and come and try your ice
Yeah,
cream?
absolutely. I mean, the thing I would say is come try our ice cream. Old shops in Woodstock, Whitney. We got a shop in Stone on the Wall in the Cotswolds and a few other bits and places, Cheltenham and Cirencester now. And yeah, we've come find us, come try the ice cream, I would say.
Brilliant. Come and try it, and there's more to come.
Absolutely.
Come.
Great.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lewis.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.